So is my screen visible? Can anyone confirm whether my screen is visible or not?
Yeah, the screen is visual.
Okay, cool. So in last lecture, we went over primitive data types like integer, strings, and integer, string, float, and so on. Then we touched upon what is the definition of variable in Python, how can we do input output in Python, and we also discussed branching using if else and nested if else, and did some coding assignments on finding even number, like let's say checking whether a number is even or not, finding maximum of three numbers and minimum of three numbers, and so on. In this lecture, we will be covering these three things. First is strings. We will go over what are strings in Python, how to define strings in Python, and various operations that can be done on strings in Python. Then we will discuss how to write loops, like similar to C. Python supports for loop and while loop, and we will be discussing them both. And we will end this session by discussing control flow in loops, specifically looking over statements like break and continue. Okay, so let's begin. So what is a string, right? A string is a data structure in Python that represents a sequence of characters. Strings are by default immutable. That is, once initialized, they cannot be updated. So example of a string in Python is like geeks for geeks or like geeks for geeks. Now to create a string, all you have to do is just take a variable, name any variable like string1, and initialize it within characters in quotes. Now this can be either in single quotes or as shown here, and when I execute this, it will print geeks for geeks. So as you can see, the string1 is a string and it is geeks for geeks. And to further verify whether it is a string or not, we can just see type string1, and when we check the type of string1, it returns as str. Now this is one way of initializing a string where we do it in single quotes. You can also initialize string using double quotes. So for example, this will also return type as string1. So type of string1 is str. Another way to initialize strings is using triple quotes, which is also supported in Python. So you can use either single or double or triple quotes to initialize a string. And when you run that, it prints string1, which is geeks for geeks, and type of string1 is str. Okay, so str is short for string, and that is the type of this variable string1, which we have initialized using characters, using a sequence of characters, and yeah, that is a string. Okay. Now, since this is a sequence of character, you can actually access individual character of this string. And to do that, we have shown here an example which is taken from Geeks for Geeks. So essentially, string is a sequence of characters. So each character will be indexed, right? So this Geeks for Geeks is indexed as G is indexed at 0, E is indexed at 1, the next E is indexed at 2, and so on till we reach the end of the string. And S is indexed at 12. So this is from left to right. You can also access string from the reverse side by using negative indexing. So the last index, which is 12, will be length of the string minus like the index of the string, index of that particular character in the sequence. So the length of the string is 13. So 12 minus 13 would be -1. 11 minus 13 would be -2, and so on. So zeros will be 0 minus 13, which is -13, right? Now here I show a particular character at an index. So when I execute this, so string1 of 0 will be the 0th character of the string, which is G, and as shown here it is G. String1 of 11 will be the 12th character of the string, which is K, and we have printed K. And string1 of -1 will also be the last character of the string, which we have also printed as S, right? So remember in Python, just one thing to remember in Python is that indexing starts from 0 and it goes left to right. So 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. Okay. Now, having discussed accessing a character in string, the next operation that is very important in strings is slicing. So let's say you want to access a particular set of characters from a particular index till a particular index. So to do that, you use string slicing, right? So string slicing is written as to access a range of characters in string. The method slicing is used. Slicing in a string is done by using a string slicing operator, which is colon, right? Colon. So here is an example demonstrating that. So we initialize a string geeks for geeks, that is our initial string, and we are slicing the characters from third index to the 12th index. And to do that, we simply write 3:12, which is 3 is the starting index and 12th is the index where you want to end. And uh, in another example, we retrieve the string characters present between the third and the second last character. Now, when I execute this, it shows initial string is geeks for geeks, slicing characters from 3 to 12, it returns ks for geek, and slicing characters between third and second last character, it returns ks for geek. Now, what happens if I don't give any ending index? So essentially it will print till the end of the string. So if I just write 3 colon, it will just print everything till the end. And if I don't give the beginning index, and if I write like colon, let's say I want to print till the second last character, so it will just print from the starting till that particular character, till that particular index that you have passed. Okay, so this is all about slicing. And now we come to the string operations. Essentially we will be going over 6 string operations. First is stripping strings, that is removing the spaces either from the left side of the string or from the right side of the string or both. Then we will be checking the case of a string, that whether a string is totally in lower case or the string is in upper case or the string is in title case. Then we will go on operations to check the starting of or the ending of the string. So checking whether a string begins with a particular set sequence of characters or a particular character and so on. And similarly, whether it ends with a particular sequence of characters or it ends with a character and so on. And next we will check whether string contains a list of characters or not. And for that we will be using two methods. First is by using the in keyword in Python, and second is the index method of the string. Then we will be checking, then we will be splitting and joining strings. And finally, we will be checking the types of strings, that whether a string is all digits, whether it is all alphabets, and whether it is a combination of alphabet and numericals. Okay. So to start with the first operation, which is stripping. So here I have taken a string geeks for geeks and I have added white space first in the beginning and then in the end. Right now, if you want to remove the left padding that I have added here, the leftmost spacing, then you call the function lstrip, right? So you use string one, you call string one dot lstrip to remove the leading spaces, and you call string one dot rstrip to remove the trailing spaces. And if you want to remove both the spaces, you use the function strip. So let me execute this and show you. Okay, so as you can see here, after doing L strip, so our initial string was this. After doing L strip, the leftmost, the leading spaces have been removed, whereas the trailing spaces are still there. And when we call R strip, the trailing spaces have been removed, but the leading spaces are still there. And when we call strip, the string one dot strip, both leading and trailing spaces have been removed. So this is how you can remove the leading and trailing spaces in a string, right? Now coming to the next set of operations, that is checking the case of a string. By case, we mean that whether a particular character in a sequence is it lower case, is it upper case, is it title case, and so on. And we also switch the case of a string. Like for example, we want to change all the characters in the string from uppercase to lowercase or lowercase to uppercase, or we want to swap the case. Like for example, if a particular character is in uppercase, you want to make that character to lowercase, and if a particular character is in lowercase, we want to switch it to uppercase. So I'll execute each of these one by one. Just so the first set of operation, we check whether a string is lower, string is upper, or string is title case. By title case, word is capital, right? So if you see the string geeks for geeks, here every first character of a word is capital. So every first letter of the word is capital. Hence it is title case, and it is not lower case, and it is not upper case. But when I change the string, let's say if I just write uh, PFG and execute this. So since this is all upper, it will return upper is true, whereas lower is false and its title is false. And if I just write GFG, since this is all lower, it will print string dot is low. For string dot is lower, it will return true, whereas for is upper and is title, it will return false. Right? Okay. Now now just in same case operations, we check like we in the case of a string, which is also known as case folding or case folding, uh, which is an essential operation in natural language processing and IR based applications. So let me just show you these 4 weeks. Okay. So here is our string. Initial string is geeks for geeks, and let's say we want to change the entire string to uppercase, right? So it will just print geeks for geeks, everything in uppercase. And when we do string one dot lower, it will change the entire string to lowercase, as you can see here. And finally, we want to invert the case of every character, and to do that, we call the function swap case. So to change the entire string to uppercase, we use string one dot upper. To change the entire string to lowercase, we use string one dot lower. Or you can also use string one dot case fold, which also does the same thing. String one dot case fold. It also converts the entire string to lower. And to swap the case, we call the function string one dot swap case. Okay. Now moving to the next set of operations to check whether a string starts or ends with a particular set of characters. So here I have an initial string geeks for geeks, and I want to check whether it starts with a particular set of characters or not. So I'll use the function starts with to check whether a particular set of characters, whether a string starts with a particular set of characters, and the function ends with to check whether a string ends with a particular set of characters. Now, the important thing to remember here is that these comparisons are case sensitive, as you will see once I execute this code. So, since the string is geeks for geeks and it starts with a capital letter, now see here when I check whether it starts with GEE with a capital G versus GEE with a lower G, it returns true in case of capitalized ones and false in case of the non-capitalized one. So these comparisons are case sensitive, right? And this also holds true for ends with. If you see here, this it returns true when it is not capitalized and returns false when it is actually capitalized. And by default, if the sequence is not present in the beginning or ending, it will return false since it does not starts or ends with that particular sequence. Right. So here in the first line, I have checked for G. In the second line, I have checked for G, but with lowercase. And in third line, I have checked for U, the word YOUU. And since geeks for geeks does not starts with U, it returns false. This was for sequence of characters. You can repeat the same operation using a particular character So like if I just write G G Y and it ends with S E and E, let's say, right? And when I execute this, so for G it returns true, for G it returns false, for Y it returns false. For S, since it ends with an S, right? Our string is geeks for geeks, it ends with an S. So for S it returns true, for capital E it returns false, and for small e also it returns false. So let me just make the prompts similar to what we have given, that for the lines with the input. Okay. So for G it is true, for G it is false, for Y it is false, for small s it is true because it ends with an S, and for E it is false, and for E it is also false. So this is how you can check whether a string starts or ends with a particular character or a sequence of characters. Now the next set of operation is to check whether a string contains a list of characters, right? So here I have initialized a string geeks for geeks again, and I want to check whether the sequence of characters GEE occurs in a string or not, right? So okay, let's see what happens when I run this. Okay, so for the first two cases, like GEE is in string, it returns true. For the second case, for U, it returns false since the sequence of characters YOU is not present in geeks for geeks, so it will return false. So that is done using the keyword in. So what basically in does is it just simply returns true if the word that you are searching, if the sequence that you are searching for is present in the sequence that you like is present in the sequence, whereas it returns false if it is not present in the sequence. So this this sequence of characters GEE, since it was present in the sequence string 1, which is geeks for geeks, so it returned true, whereas for the sequence YOU it returned false. Now one more method to see whether a sequence of character is present in a string or not is to use the built-in method index. So with a string object, you have a method index which returns the index of the first character of the sequence that you're looking for. So for example, since I'm searching for EKS in the string in this example, and I'm trying to find the index of EKX in the string, it returned true, it returned the index 2, right? Now when I check for the index, so 0 is G, 1 is for E, and 2 is for E, so it returned the starting index of this sequence where it was found in the string. So if I print like this, if I print string 1 of string 1 dot index uh, colon, length of the string, so, yeah, that's 3. So it will print EKS. So essentially what index returns is the first index, is the starting index of the string that you're searching for, right? So here, since you search for EKX, it will return the index of E when EKS was found in the string, right? However, there is one problem in using index, and that is if a sequence of characters that you're searching for example, in the second example, we are searching for end in the string, for the word end in the string, END, and uh, it does not exist, right? The word END does not exist in geeks for geeks. So what it does is it throws a value error, like it throws a value error that I cannot find such kind of substring. So yeah, whenever you are using index, you have to make sure that there is a proper flow control so that your program does not uh, ends abruptly by raising some sort of exceptions or errors, right? Yeah, so that is how you can see whether a string contains, whether a string is present in another string and or another string or not. So we did that by using the keyword in and by using a built-in method index, right? Then the next set of operations that we will be looking is on splitting a string, right? So yeah, here we have initialized a string geeks for geeks, and there is a slash n which means an enter. So when we can essentially split strings on whatever character we want for, like whatever character we want the string to be split on. So it can either be split on spaces, it can either be split on new lines, or it can either be split on any keyword. Like for example, I have shown an example here using the keyword for. So I can split a string on the occurrence of for. Okay, so let me show you what it does. Okay, yeah, sorry for that. So okay, there people are going. So yeah, in case anyone has any doubt, you can just raise your hand and let me know. Yeah. So as I was saying, you can split a string on a new line using the method split lines, and it will split a string on slash n. You can also split a string using white spaces, and for that you call the method split. And in the same method split, you can pass a sequence of characters on which you want to split a string. So for example, here I wanted to split the string on occurrence of 4, so I just passed 4. Now what it returns is a list. So what all these functions essentially returns is a list of such strings. That is a list of such strings that contains these splits that we have obtained for each of these functions. So when we are using split lines, we are splitting on a new line character. So what it will return as a first token is geeks for, and the second token will be geeks because we are splitting it on a new line. And when we are splitting on white spaces, so it will first return geeks as the first token, for as the second token, and geeks as the second, and geeks as the third token, because all of them are separated by white spaces. And when I split using the keyword for, it returns geeks as the first token and the rest as the second token. So geeks and slash and geeks, which means geeks and geeks in a new line. So this is what it returns when we split on for. Now, just like you can split strings in Python, you can also join strings in Python. So uh, and there are various ways to do it. First is using the function join, in which you pass the strings as a list, and then you give the character with which you want to join the strings. And another way is just using the plus operation, like you want to concatenate the strings, right? So let us go over each of them. So string one is geeks for geeks, string two is I love coding, and in the first case I have just join the strings without giving any white space or anything, and I've used the join function where the first string is geeks for geeks and second string is I love coding. So it will just append, or it will just concatenate these two strings without any space, and it will print. So as you can see, the output here, geeks for geeks, I love coding is the output, and string one plus string two, that is just concatenating these strings. It will also return the same thing without any white space in the middle. So this is string one, geeks for geeks, and I love coding is the string two. Now we also have tried with white spaces. So join strings with white spaces, where I have string one and string two, and I have passed them as a list to this join method, and also added a space using which you want to join the string. So what it does is it returns a string, and it will return as geeks for geeks space in middle and I love coding. So that is how these two strings are joined. So essentially, join function takes as input two things. So first is this iterable, like the strings, basically a list of strings that you want to join, and also the character using which you want to join, and it returns a string with it returns a string in which all these strings are concatenated using the character that you have passed. So for example, here I pass space, so it returns all the characters with space, like all the strings with space in middle. And just like space, you can also give a new line character which is slash n, and it returns like geeks for geeks, and there is a slash n, and we move to the next line, and it prints I love coding. So you can also use like random things. So for example, if I just like slash n and hyphen, put hyphens in middle and slash n, and if I just do this, it will print like geeks for geeks with this dashes slash n in the middle and slash n after the dashes, and print I love coding after that, and so on. You can also give as many strings as you want. So like if I add another string, so string 3 is I am in class, and if I just pass this, I sorry string 3, so it will just print geeks for geeks, which is our first string. String 2 is I love coding, and string 3 is I love in class, and all of these are joined using this sequence of characters. Okay. Now, after going over splitting and joining, we now we now look we now check whether we now check what types of strings are there. So I have here in randomly initialized strings using characters and sequence of characters and so on. So first operation is checking whether a string is totally digits or not, right? So for that we use the function is digit, and what it does is it will return true if the string that you are calling on is all digits, like it contains all digits between 0 to 9, right? That means every character of that string is a digit, right? Then next type of checking that is usually done is checking whether a string is to all alphabets. That means every character that is present in a string, whether it is alphabet or not, right? And last type of checking that is usually done is checking whether a string is alphanumeric. That is, it is combination of alphabets and numerics. So let us run this string, right? So for the first set of operations, that is checking whether a string is digit or not, our string 1 is just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. String 2 is I love coding without any spaces. String 3 is I love 4, 5, 6. String 4 is 1, 2, 3.56, and string 5 is geeks for geeks, right? So for checking whether a string is digit or not, only string 1 is the one which contains which every character in the sequence is a digit, and all others there are alphabets and special characters and spaces. So only for string 1 it should return true, and that is what it does. It returns true only for string 1, whereas for all the other strings it returns false. Now checking for whether a string is alphabet or not. So here I have like string 1 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. String 2 is I love coding. String 3 is and string 4 and string 5. So of these strings, only string 2 is one which contains in which every character in a sequence is an alphabet, whereas in all the other strings it contains like white spaces or special characters or numerics. So only for string 2 it returns true, right? For alphanumeric, since string 4 and string 5, these two strings contains a special character and white spaces, it should return false, whereas for rest of the string it should return true because these are combinations of alphabets and numericals and numerals. So is alpha num string 1, it returns true. Is alpha num string 2, it returns true. Is alpha num string 3, it returns true, whereas for string 4 and string 5 it returns false. right? Yeah. Now, this was something which was also covered in last class, like uh, you can perform various sort of arithmetics on strings also. So if you have like if you have a character a, you can multiply it by, like you can multiply it by an integer and it will return that particular character copied as many times as you have multiplied it with. So here I have string 2, which is initialized as the character a multiplied by 9. So what it will return is a 9 times, and that is what you will get in string 2 when we print it. Let me just show you quickly. So based on like using this, you can also show formatted output. Like you can nicely present outputs without taking much hassle. Like you can just print hyphen into 50, and like in whatever way you want to do. So you can also put space times 5 to bring some indentations, and underscore times 10 to like show a row, to show a fill in the blank, and so on. And you can format your output using these neat tricks if you want to. Okay. Now, one more thing that I wanted to discuss here is order. Like there is a function in Python, order, which returns the which essentially returns the ASCII value. So, for example, if you want to check ASCII value of a like if you want to check ASCII values, or if you want to do arithmetics based on ASCII representations, then you can use ORD function on a character to get the ASCII value of that particular thing. So this is similar to what we do in C. So like the ASCII values are the same. So like here for capital A it is 65, for small a it was 97, and for space it is 32. So it will give 32, right? And you can check for all these things like ORD of 1 and ORD of 1 and so on. So it will just give you the, like using ORD function you can check the ASCII values. ORD of like that is, this is just a way of checking what is the ASCII value of a particular string. Now, having discussed strings, we move to the second part of the lecture, which is discussing iterations with loops. Now, similar to C, we will be covering basically two types of loops, which is a for loop and a while loop, right? Okay. Now, before going into actual loops, I would like to discuss about this function range 1 to n plus 1, or basically a range function. So, what does a range function do? Right, let me just show you. Essentially, if I just print a range, like if I print range from 0 to 100, right, it essentially returns a iterable, and that contains all the values from from the parameters that you have given to the range. So for example, here I have given like 0 as the starting index and 100 as the ending index, and the default increment is by 1, right? So what it will do is it will return the values between 0 to 100 at one step. So it will return 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on till it reaches 100. So here the starting index is inclusive, whereas the ending index is exclusive. So it will start from 0, but it will terminate just before 100. So it will the output of this range will contain 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way till 99. You can also give an additional parameter, which is a step size. As you can see, it has popped up here. So start, support, like start is an index, stop is an index, and step is the increments in which you want the items to be generated. So you can give 2, and it will. So if I just print for I in range 0 to 10, and I, it will print all the numbers from 0 to 10 exclusive, so 10 is not included. And if I print like 0 to 10 with a step size of 2, it will print all the even numbers because we are giving step sizes 2. So first index is 0, then it will add 2, 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 and finally it will stop at 8, because after that if we add 2 we will get 10, and we don't want to include that. But the moment I give 11, 10 will also be printed because 10 is now within the range. Here you can, I think you can also give like fractional. Let's see whether this works or not. Okay, so no, you cannot give fractionals. You can only give integer types. You can also give uh, negative integer. So like if you want to start from 11 and go all the way to 0, you can also give -1, and then it will print in the decreasing order. It will go from 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, and all the way till 0, excluding 0 obviously, and it will print till 1. And here also you can like step size of -1, -2, or you can also go like -5, and it will print 11, 6, and 1. Right? So for going over loops, this is the basic function that you have to remember, that is range, which essentially generates a list that contains those indexes from starting position to the ending position, with step size as the difference between two adjacent values. So here it printed 11, 6, and 1, and that is what we got, right? Okay, now we'll start with a basic loop. So your task here is to uh, Python code for getting sum of natural numbers up to a number n, right? So what you will do, you will just like we used to do in C, we will first define n, that is the natural number till when you want to find the sum, and then another variable s that will store the sum at each step, right? So how will you write this particular loop in C? You will just write like for I equals to 0, I is less than n, I plus plus, right? This is a standard C syntax, and at every iteration of the every iteration of the for loop, you will increment s by I, since your goal is to find the sum of natural numbers up to a particular number n, right? Now you can do similar things you can do similar kind of code in Python and using similar syntax. So what you will just write is for I in range 1 comma n plus 1. So 1 is the starting natural number, and n plus 1 is written because you want to include n, right? We don't want to exclude n. So it will start from number 1 and iterate up to n excluding n plus 1, right? And what we do is we just add I to s because we want to store the sum of the natural numbers till the particular number n, right? So let me just execute this loop. So at every point I have also printed the sum so far, right? So for the first iteration, since I is 1, right, because we have initialized I with 1, I is 1, and sum so far is 1 because s was 0 and we added 1 to s, and s now became 1, it is 1. Now for 2 it will be 1 plus 2, so sum so far is 3. For 3 it will be 3 plus 3, and sum so far is 6, and it goes on till 10 since our n was 10, right? Since our n was initialized at 10, and we finally ended up with 10, and the sum so far is 55, and we know that sum of first 10 natural numbers is 55, so this logic works correctly. Now, similar loop could have also been computed using a while loop, right? And just like in C, since like in while loop we have to give a terminating condition in the parameter of while. Similarly, in Python also you need to give a terminating condition. So we start with I as 1, s as 0, and till I reaches n plus 1, we will keep on adding, right? So let me execute this, and as you can see here, it starts with 1, and like sum so far is this, and finally when it reaches I10, it it gets to 55, and the sum is 55. Okay, so this is a basic this was for uh, basic introduction to for and while loops. Now let's get into some problem solving. So the first task for this for loop would be to check whether a number is prime or not. Okay, so how it can be done? Like, what are essentially prime numbers, right? So prime number is a number for which the only factor is 1 and the number itself, right? So uh, what we can do to check whether a number is prime or not is we will start from 1 and go all the way till n and check whether every number divides n or not. And if we find a number that and if we find any number that divides n, that means it is not a prime, and we will store a flag. So essentially what we will do is iterate iterate till n, right? Iterate till n. So we'll iterate till n, and in each iteration we will check check whether check whether a number divides n. If yes, then we mark a flag as 1, and otherwise we'll do nothing. And at the end of the iteration, if flag is 1, right? If flag is 1, number is that means the number is not prime, because we found a number which is not n and which is not 1, and it actually divides this particular number. So if flag is 1, that means it is not prime, so we will print not prime. Okay, so how will this program look like? So what we will you can try this code on your own for some time, and maybe in next 2 or 3 minutes I will code it live to show you the solution. Is the approach clear? Like, if it is not clear, you can raise your hand, or like you can just speak. But yeah, we can try for like maybe 2 3 minutes on your own, and then we will share the solution. Yeah. So how it will look like? So we will first take like we will first set a number. So let's say n is 37, right? So what we will do is for I in range 2 comma n in each of the iteration, and we before that we also have a flag which is set as 0, right? For I in range 2 comma n, if n mod I is equal to 0, right? That means we found a number which divides n, right? So if n mods I is equal to 0, we will set flag as 1. Okay, and when this iteration ends, we will see if flag, that means flag is 1, we will just print not prime, else we print yes prime. Else we print yes prime. Let's see yes prime. And so I did it for 37 and I got that yes, it is a prime number. And when, let's say if I put something like maybe 44, which we all know is a prime, which is not a prime number, so it's not prime. Okay, so this is a very simple, straightforward method to see whether a particular number is prime or not, right? Similarly, yeah. Now another thing that you can that you can also do as a practice problem is like code to print all even numbers till n, right? Code to print all even numbers till n. So here, what would be the what would our basic approach be? So like just like previous taking like previously taking for prime, we'll iterate till n, right? And at every index, like in every iteration, what we do, we check whether a particular number is even. If so, we print that number. We, we print that number. Else we do nothing, right? So what? So a simple code would look like this. So let's say I want to print all the even numbers till 100, right? So what I can do is for I in range 100, I can just take like if I mod 2 if I mod 2 is equal if I mod 2 is 0, that means it is an even number. I will just print found an even number, and the value of that number is I. So it will print all the even numbers from 0 to 100, right? So if you don't give any starting index, if you don't give any starting index, by default, range assumes that your starting index is 0. I could have also given like print all the even number between -100 to +100. Let's see what it does. Okay. So it starts from -100, right? And it goes all the way to 100 and prints all the even numbers. So -100, 99, and so on, and all the way till the end, which is 98. Right? So if you don't give any starting index, by default, it assumes that your starting index is 0. Like I just write range 100, and and if you don't provide any step size, then also it assumes that your step size is 1. So for example, if I provide a step size as 2 and my starting index is 0, so this is what it will print. So 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, and so on. So 0 to 100, and this is what If I give step size as 4, then it will print every fourth even number, so 0, 4, 8, 12, 16, and so on. Okay. So that is all about simple looping constructs. So I hope uh, this makes things a bit clear that the basic structure is for I in whatever you want to iterate, like for I in range 0 to 100, and then you provide the body of the iteration. Now, if you remember, when we were discussing about conditioning, like conditioning based execution using if and else, there we we showed you that for Python, indentation is very important, right? So similar to that branching construct, here also everything has to be with some indentation. So just like with if else conditions, where the block of that particular condition has to be with some leading spaces and fixed number of leading spaces. In for loop also you have to do that. So here you can see that I have two leading spaces, right, in the iterative block. So when I write the for loop and press and enter, I get two leading spaces, and that defines the block of this. That defines the scope of this for loop. That all the statements within this two space gap will be present inside the for loop. And if I write anything like this, so if I write print not in for loop, it will throw an error because it does not match any outer indentation level, right? And similarly, if I uh, give more spaces than needed, then also it will throw an error because it says unexpected indent, right? So similar to if else, like writing code in if else, you have to also make sure that you follow the same indentation at every line that is to be written inside the for loop. Okay. So this concludes the discussion for looping, and now we see some basic control flows in loops. So if you're executing a loop and you want to skip some instance or break the execution of a loop once a satisfying condition is found, you use control flows. And to do control flows, you have two types of statements in Python. That is two keywords in Python. One is break. One is the keyword break, which breaks the execution of loop, and the other one is the keyword continue, which skips the execution of a loop, right? So here I have provided some examples. So first example is of a continue, like example of how to use continue in a for loop. And the problem statement is getting only sum of even numbers, right? So you want to find only sum of even numbers up to a particular number n, right? So here I am initializing n as 100, and I want only the sum of even numbers that are present till 100. So the basic logic would be that if a number is not even, then I don't want to consider it for adding, right? Then I don't want to be considered. Then I don't want to consider it to be added to the sum that I have got so far. So what I will do is, if I mod 2, that means if it is, I will divide it by 2 and see the remainder. If it is not 0, that means it is an odd number, and I will just skip that iteration and I will not consider it for the sum. So let me just show you how the output looks like. Let me do it for a smaller number. So yeah. So when I'm running it for like from 0 to, like when I start from 1 and I want to go all the way till 10, because I want to find the sum of even numbers up to 10, let's say, then every odd number between 1 to 10, I will skip that iteration and I will not consider it, right? So yeah. So for first iteration, it does it skipped because 1 is an odd number and sum so far is 0. For second iteration, it considered because I is 2 and sum so far is 2, right? it got the sum. Then for I equals to 3, it skipped the iteration because it is an odd number, and this goes on till we reach 10, and we see that for 10, the we have completed for iteration 10, and sum so far is 30. So the sum of even numbers till 10 is 30, and for sum of odd numbers till 10 is 25, and that's how we get the sum 55. Okay, so I hope this example is clear to you. Now moving to the second example, which is an example of a break statement, where the point is to check the first occurrence of vowel in a string and return that particular index. Now, as you might be aware, in English alphabets, there are two types of alphabets. One is a vowel and other is a consonant. So vowels are like A, E, I, O, U, and all the others are consonants, right? Now, our task here is given a string, check whether a particular character of a string is a vowel, and if it is a vowel, return its index. But a catch here is that you have to return the index of first occurrence of a vowel in a string and stop your execution there. So essentially, what you want, what you're expected to do is, whenever the first time you encounter a vowel in a string, you are supposed to return that index and break out of the loop. And to do that, we will use the keyword break. Right? Now I have initialized the string randomly using this HFDBCOVL anything. And what I am doing is, uh, for for every character in this sequence of characters, I am checking whether that a character at a particular index is a vowel or not. And to do that, I can simply check it against each of the vowels. So string of I is A, or string of I is E, or string of I is I, or O or U, which gives us all the vowel. And if I did find a vowel, I'll just print that found a vowel in this particular string at index I, and also return the vowel that I have, and also print the vowel that I have found. And since this is the first occurrence, I will stop here and break out of the loop, right? And in case I don't find any vowel till a particular index, I will just keep on printing that I have not found an index till now. I have not found a vowel till now, and I will keep on iterating till I find a vowel. Okay, so let's see how it works. Right. So it checked till index 0 and it was H. Okay, let me also print I, and within this I will print string of I. Then it will be more clear. So I check for the zeroth index and H, which is not a vowel. Then I check for the first index, which is F, not a vowel. Then I check for B, which is at second index, not a vowel. Then D, not a vowel. C, not a vowel. Then I found the first vowel O, right? First vowel O, which I found at index 5, and I returned, and I will not even consider checking the rest of the strings, because this is the first occurrence of my vowel, and I found a vowel, and I will break out of this. You can also try with like different strings. So if I just write A, B, C, D, F, V, O, L, then it will find the string at first index itself, and it will break out of the for loop. As you can see, found a vowel in this particular string at index 0, which was A, and it printed A as the vowel. Okay, so this this is a simple example of checking whether a particular string contains a vowel or not, and returning the first occurrence of a vowel. Right. Now, using this control flows, I wanted to think of a segment of code using which you can compute GCD of two given numbers, M and N. Okay. So maybe you can think about it for some time, and then we will go over the approach. Yeah, so if anyone has any doubt, or if anyone would like to propose an approach uh, to find GCD using for loops of two numbers, maybe you can unmute and speak. Like we like Prasanjit and I are open to discussion. Okay, so here is what a simple approach of finding GCD for of two numbers using looping would look like. Okay, so first thing that that we all might know or might understand is that the GCD of two numbers would be less than or equal to the smaller of the two numbers, right? So first we will do is we will take a variable, like let's say we will take the variable r, and we will initialize it with minimum of the two, right? M comma n. So for example, if m is 10 and n is, let's say, 15, then we will initialize, then our r will be 10, because minimum of 10 and 15 would be 10. And it is obvious that the greatest common divisor of 10 and 15 would obviously be less than or equal to 10, right? Now, but what we can simply do is we will we will take this r as our initializing point, that, and we will keep, and we will do the follows. So we will see that while there is r, right, and it is greater than 0, right, while r is greater than 0, we will see that if r divides m, like if m mod r is 0 and n mod r is 0, oh sorry, and n mod r is 0, right? So what we found in this condition, we see that if it divides both m and n, right, and since we are starting with a number that is minimum of these two, and we keep on decrementing that number at each step, if that particular number divides both m and n, that means we have found that means we have found the GCD, right? So we will just print found GCD, which is r, and we break, right? Else what we will do, we will keep on decrementing r. Else we will just do r is equal to r minus 1, right? So let's do a dry run of this. What will it do first, right? So for first value of r, which is 10, it will see whether 10 divides. It will see whether 10 divides 10 divides 10, true. 10 divides 15, no. So 10 is not the thing. Then r will be updated to 9, right? Now does 9 divides 10? No, it does not divide, so it is not. Then it will decrement r, right? So it decrements r, and it sees, does 8 divides 10? No, it decrements. Does 7 divides 10? No. Does 6 divides 10? No. Then finally comes 5. So does 5 divides 10? Yes. Does 5 divides 15? Yes. So we found a GCD, and we will print this, right? So this is essentially a simple technique using while loop to find GCD of the two numbers, right? So let's write the code for this. So we have m as 15, and we have m comma n as, we have m as 10 and n as 15. Now we have a dummy variable r, which stores the minimum of this m and n. Now what it does is, uh, while r, because we don't want it to go to 0, otherwise we will run into an exception that division by 0 and our program will fall. So while r, if this if m mod r is 0 and n mod r is 0, we uh, print on GCD r of m n n, else we decrement it, like we print and we break, because we found the greatest number which divides both m and r, else we decrement r equals to r minus 1. Okay, let's see what is the output. So it did fine, right? Otherwise, like, let me also print in f. So print f, uh, r is not the GCD. Let's see what happens. Right. So first it checks for 10, which is not the GCD, 9, not the GCD, 8, not the GCD, 7, not the GCD, 6, not the GCD, and finally for 5, it found GCD of 10 and 15 as 5 and printed 5. You can also try for different combinations, like maybe 12 and 14. So here it will be 2, and we found the rest 2. And for 2 co-primes, like maybe 12 and 13, it will return 1 as the GCD, because 1 is the only GCD for 12 and 13. Yeah. So this is a simple logic to find GCD of two numbers m and n, which uses break and continue statements. Okay. Now, similar to nestings in if-else, you can also nest for loops. So here I have just shown a simple example. Like, the syntax goes like this: for I in range n, like for j in range I plus 1 comma n. If you want these two loops to be dependent, then you write whatever is inside the loop. So as a dummy example, I have just used, like, the problem is that you want to print all pairs of numbers that add up to 12 between two numbers like 1 and 10. Okay, so I start with I start with I, which is our first, which will be the first index of our pair. So essentially, what would a pair look like? It will be like 6 comma 6, because they add up to 12. Like, uh, 1 comma 11. So I say, what are the number of, like, what are the pairs that add up to 12? So 1, 12 to 10. Then we have 3, 9. Then we have 4, 8. Then we have 5, 7. Then we have 6, 6. Yeah, and similar pairs, but with the index 5. So then it will be 7, 5. Then it will be 8, 4. Then it will be 9, 3. Then it will be 10, 2, and 11 and 1. Okay. Now, uh, in our given problem, we want to check between 1 to 10. So obviously, 11, 1 and 1, 11 would not be in our final answer. So our final answer would be 2, 10, 3, 9, 4, 8, and all these pairs that are here. Right. Now let's see what happens if I just execute the code that I have written. Right. So what is happening in this code is, for the outer loop, it is iterating from 1 to 11, right? That means it is the left index, it goes over all the indexes from 1 to 11, whereas uh, for the right index, that is for j, which constitutes our right index, it only goes from I to 11, right? So it starts with whatever is the current value of I and it checks till 11, does it finds a match or not, right? So yeah, now you can see that it prints 210, 39, 48, 57, 66. Now the moment I goes beyond 6 and I becomes 7, it cannot find a j between 7 and 11 that makes the sum to 12, right? Now to print the pairs in the repeated fashion, the only modification that I need to do is replace I with the number that I want to find the sum. So here I will replace I with 1, because then even if I go beyond 6 or 7, I can find a number between 1 and 11 that will make the sum to 12. So when I execute this now, it will print 210, 39, 48, 57, 66, 75, 84, 93, and 102. So this is how you can use nested loops in Python. And similar to nested if else, we have to make sure that the indentations are all right. So the indentation for the outer for loop is 2 spaces, and for inner for loop is 4 spaces. So anything that I print with a 2 space, with a two any statement that I use with a 2 space gap would be inside outer for loop, and anything that will be for 4 spaces inside the body of this for, obviously, would be inside inner for loop. So let me just show you. So yeah, inside inner for loop, like it is running for 11 times to find, like for the first iteration, it is trying to find that particular j such that when added to 1, it gives 12. So it will run for 11 times, and then for similarly for j equals to 1, for j equals to 2, and so on. So it found a pair that adds up to 2, it prints, and so on. Like for, and this is printed inside outer for loop whenever a particular iteration is over. Now, one thing that we can also do is we can use break statements to break out whenever we do find a pair to further optimize the number of iterations that this loop executes, right? So I can just print this, I can break. So you will see that it executes it a lot less times than it was executing previously. I hope the difference is clear. Let me do it once more without break statements and once with a break statement, so the difference becomes more visible. What happened? And inside, that inside, and inner for loop. Yeah. So this inner for loop will be printed as many times as the inner for loop is being executed, right? So yeah, it for inner for loop, inner for loop, inner for loop, then inside outer for loop, then inner for loop, inner for loop, inner for loop, inner for loop. You can see that this number, that this is constant, right? And this I think is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Because what it does is it will go all the way from 1 to 10 in every iteration, right? For every iteration of the inner for loop, it will run for 10 times, even when it has actually found a pair. So to reduce that, what we can do is we can just put a break statement once we have found, so that the execution of outer for loop does not continue, even if it has found a pair. So when we print this, you can clearly see that there is a difference. Like it found inner for loop, inner for loop, inner for loop, that it found a pair. Then let me move also inside this statement. Let me also print this here to just show you the difference. Like once it is found, it will only execute when it finds and it will break after that. So inside outer for loop, found a pair that adds up to 10 inside outer for loop. Then inside, so for 2, it found a pair at 10 and inside inner for loop, and then it breaks. So yeah, this is just some simple optimizations that you can also check at your end. And yeah, if you have any questions, comments, or any queries, maybe you can ask them now because we are done with the content for this lecture. So we have covered strings, we have covered iterations with loops, and we also touched upon control flow in loops using uh, break statement and continue statement.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Gunjan. Yeah. So the next class will be on hands-on, right? So we'll have multiple algorithms. It's like we will be discussing solutions to them with Python, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So we hope that the next session would be a bit more interactive because we
Mhm.
will be doing case studies on like various problems that are very common using for loops and branching. So yeah, hope to see you guys then.
Yeah, so it's like neutron rafson and other algorithms, right? Which are standard for solving, let's say, like differential equation and all these things. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so I hope you learned something today and thanks for attending and just closing the call now.
Thank you.